The war that we're fighting now is here. It's in our minds. And it's a war we cannot fight alone. We have to have allies or other veterans to be able to win this fight. And unfortunately, the casualties are mounting.
In fact, more soldiers are dying here at home than on the battlefield.
The more I learned about suicide and how psychologists and psychiatrists, view it, the more I realized just how close I actually was, to doing it.
Stephen is one of the lucky ones. We'll highlight his story, as well as the treatments available to our returning veterans, from healthcare workers to Houston Police Department's crisis team.
Over the last 5 years, the numbers of contacts we've had with veterans have increased every year, and they're continuing to increase.
We're all wired differently in the head. Everybody is all different, and just because you're affected by something and someone else isn't, that doesn't make you weak. The biggest thing is that you're not weak for getting help.
We are shining the light on military suicides on this very special edition of Fox 26 Morning News Extra. And good morning, and thanks for joining us for this special edition of Fox 26 Morning News Extra. I'm Natalie Bomke. We've just celebrated another birthday honoring this great nation. We have a lot to be proud of in this country, including the greatest fighting force in history. But they are dying in record numbers. And I'm not talking about on the battlefield, but rather by their own hands. A recently released report out of the Department of Veterans Affairs found on average about 22 veterans a day committed suicide in 2010. It is an American tragedy that remains underreported. We start this broadcast with the story of a Houston Air Force veteran, Stephen Otero. The enemy he faced when he returned home from the field of battle was post-traumatic stress disorder. His story is one of perseverance and love. It will give you a glimpse into why so many veterans are taking their own lives.
You ready?
For the Otero family, this is the American dream, a dream possible in part by Stephen's 11 years of service with the U.S. Air Force.
I joined the military. I think like most other young men, I was kind of torn, what was going to be the next step for me. As at 17, 18 years old, not really sure if college was going to be, the path that I wanted to pursue. And but I knew that I needed to do something to take the next step in life and start trying to grow up a bit. And the military ended up being just exactly what I needed.
Stephen would soon find that his loving wife Sarah was also exactly what he needed to win the battle of his life. The couple was married less than a week before Stephen's first deployment to Iraq. Their twins, a constant reminder of how far they've come.
I was worried that if I died over there that I wouldn't leave her with anything. And it was time anyway, and it just so happened that chain of events kind of went down and the way it did, but it was time. After 5 years, it was time.
In Iraq, Stephen was part of a team that responded to improvised explosive devices, approaching the devices on the ground and analyzing their makeup. The intensity of the job was unlike anything he had ever experienced before.
The first deployment was the reality of war. I felt so attached to the adrenaline dumps that I would get every time I'd put my kit on and we'd get a call. And we were on call 24 hours a day the entire time we were there. When I came home, I was searching for that feeling again. I was searching for that feeling of this is about to happen, this is what you have to do, and then this is how things are going to play out. And I couldn't find anything at home that delivered the level of intensity or adrenaline that hopping into the back of a combat vehicle brings to a person.
After the first deployment, there was a whole new element there that we had to learn to balance. He changed, a lot from before he went to Iraq to when he came home, and I didn't know what to expect, and I wasn't sure how to help him.
6 months overseas and Stephen was back home. But in his mind, he never left the battlefield. He longed for another opportunity to return to combat.
Really, it was, it was overwhelming. I mean, you have one person that, I felt like he was a new person. So I didn't know how to play off his mood swings. I didn't know how to react, if I should be quiet or if I should, get him to talk to me about what was going on, if I should just give him space. I didn't know what he needed. And I tried a lot of different things, and some things worked and some things didn't, and it was scary.
There was physical pain related to Stephen's mood swings, the repeated vibrations from rocket-propelled grenades landing near his unit, and the detonation of IEDs wore on Stephen's body and mind. The results were sleepless nights, aggression, anxiety around large crowds, pain, and isolation.
In my opinion, the only help I got was, going with him to his appointment, really. It wasn't until things became much more severe after Afghanistan that they also offered me maybe I should go talk to a psychologist, but it sort of helped, but it really didn't, because the psychologist they sent me to didn't have any expertise in the area, so she didn't really know how to guide me on how to help him.
During his second deployment, Stephen saw the war effort from a new perspective, now operating as a combat photographer. But what he viewed as therapy, returning to the world he was trained to be a part of, ultimately did not take away the pain.
I had this idea in my head that if I could just get back over there, that everything would be okay. And so I worked really hard to try and be ready, just ready enough to go ahead and throw my kit back on and grab my helmet and get back out the door. And I felt like I needed it. I needed that to move forward, was just let me go back to war again, different area of operation. But hopefully that would help me renormalize again. And it did. As soon as I hit the ground in Afghanistan, I felt like $1 million. $1 million, and yet again, I was so ready and eager to be out there, but I just couldn't turn it off when I came back home. When I came back home from Afghanistan, I was all smiles and hugs initially, but really, even the very first 2 or 3 days back from Afghanistan, I was freaked out in my house and was on the phone trying to call doctors to say, hey, I know something is not right already.
Military doctors prescribed Stephen 11 different medications. He was taking up to 30 pills a day. There were sleep aids, antidepressants, mood depressors, and pain management pills. He was left drifting in and out of reality, unable to live what he believed to be a meaningful life.
Lost. How do I help? What do I do? Sad, because I loved him so much, and for him to not love himself at that point it hurt. And so I just try to show him how good he really had it, try to talk to him about it, try to explain that to him. Of course, the level of medication he was on, I didn't really get that. There wasn't, sometimes the level of medications he was on, there wasn't much there. He was kind of a zombie. And so my opinion on that part was that it wasn't helping.
The more I learned about suicide and how psychologists and psychiatrists, view it, the more I realized just how close I actually was, to doing it. Because I was in this rehearsal stage and practicing, and I had drawn out and diagrammed the room that I was going to do it in and how specifically I was going to do it, the time of day that I wanted to do it. And there was a key piece in there that I hadn't figured out, and I guess it's a very good thing that I hadn't figured it out yet. It was, how do I do this and successfully take my own life without having my wife find my body? And it was really literally during that time frame of me attempting to answer that question for myself, a civilian friend of mine had popped in and was able to stop me.
The gravity of the situation finally sunk in, and Stephen came up with a plan. He quit his prescribed medications cold turkey. A surgery to curb his physical pain helped him manage his sleep and depression.
I think the military did a decent job of helping me identify what was going on, absolutely. But the military trains us to go to war, but they don't really train us to come home. And that is something that, hopefully hopefully is getting, better. And it seems to be.
No, he'll never go back to who he was before. Though his experiences have changed just like anyone, your experiences in life change who you are, and you learn from them and you grow from them, and every day, it'll never go away, but every day, he deals with it and he finds a way to help it enhance who he is now and tries to find ways to help other people too that are going through the same thing.
And unfortunately, it's not difficult to find people who are going through the same thing. As I mentioned earlier, 22 veterans a day in 2010 committed suicide. And that number is probably higher since only 21 states officially report veteran suicides to the VA. Texas, which has a large military population, is among the states that don't report suicides. Staff Sergeant Stephen Otero joins me now to talk more about this tragic epidemic and what helped him through it. And Stephen, we've become good friends over the past year or so, talking about veterans and veteran issues. And I know that this is a topic that is near and dear to your heart. And Absolutely. You shared with me that you joined the military at the age of 18. What was it like trying to adapt to civilian life? And have you found other veterans who struggle as well?
Well, absolutely. Every day, because of the nature of my job, I work for Security American Mortgage. We're a VA lender, and I receive phone calls from hundreds of veterans every single day. And because of the nature of my job, they are typically sharing intimate details about their life, their background, their finances, their family size.
Sure.
And so, unfortunately, sometimes they share some of their issues. One of my loan officers actually just dealt with an issue about 2.5 weeks ago where a young man spoke, and for about 20 minutes or so, he attempted to direct the conversation, around the subject of suicide. He was experiencing a divorce and had a lot of financial issues, and he was attempting to get a handle on everything, but when he kept redirecting the conversation towards how he felt like hurting himself or how he had a bit of a desire to just end it all, obviously our staff member was very alarmed and reached out to me, and I reached out directly to the Wounded Warrior Project. And I spoke to a gentleman named John Roberts, who's one of their vice presidents for mental health, and he immediately got on the horn and reached out to Florida. And we had somebody on the phone with that gentleman within 24 hours, and we were able to direct him to some of the more appropriate services through the VA.
Let's talk about the Wounded Warrior Project, because that has dramatically changed. Just over the past year or so, there are now outreach branches for each division of the military. Talk a little bit about that, because I think that's something that many veterans don't know about.
Right, absolutely. And the Wounded Warrior Project is one of the, most wonderful veteran nonprofit charities that that exists out there. They've very well funded. They have the ability to reach out nationwide. But now, thankfully, the different individual branches of the armed services have caught up with attempting to provide outreach that the nonprofits have been providing, here during this gap of time where, unfortunately, the Department of Defense didn't have these large outreach offices set up. Now, as an Air Force airman, I can reach back out to San Antonio and contact the Air Force Wounded Warrior Program Office, and they will actually help provide very specific services in conjunction with the nonprofits, in partnership with them as well. And so, things that weren't available to me, a few years ago, things like, adapted sports, and programs to help me do yoga or learn other things, learn fishing, learn hunting, do other things that are positive, and be able to channel what could be negative energy and try to turn it around and look on the bright side and always find that silver lining.
And that's what you've been able to do through those adaptive sports, right?
Absolutely. The Air Force reached out to me last summer, about 2 months after I was discharged, and they gave me a call and they said, "Hey, Stephen, we have this new program. We just stood this up, and we'd like to invite you to come and learn how to play wheelchair basketball. We'd like for you to come learn how to, shoot an air pistol in the Olympic-style fashion." And then in May, we just had a 10-day Warrior Games, which was a huge, huge event. You know, we had all the branches of the military sent a team out there. We even had, you know, Prince Harry and our partners over in the UK come by, and they were huge, huge supporters. Prince Harry actually said that he was making a promise to all of our veterans here that he wanted to host an international Warrior Games here coming up in the next few years. The power of healing through sport is just immense. You know, it really gives us a good, positive, and healthy avenue to channel all of our energy.
And that's wonderful. That is just wonderful that you found that. We appreciate all your time and, of course, your service. Thank you, Stephen.
My pleasure, absolutely.
And if you'd like to connect with Stephen, you can go to our live chat page on myfoxhoustonlive.com. He's going to be online shortly. He's going to be chatting throughout the hour with you. Any questions that you might have about his service or some of the organizations that he can connect you with. We're also going to post information about everything featured in today's program on our website, myfoxhouston.com. You'll find it all under the Scene on TV page. And feelings of depression are certainly not specific to our veterans, and that's why the Houston Police Department is responding differently to calls for help on 911. That story coming up next. And also we'll speak with veterans of the Vietnam War and World War II about how they are coping with civilian life. Stay with us.
If you think about it, not a whole lot was provided for Vietnam vets, so they were just ignored, and if they committed suicide, it's because they committed suicide. It had nothing to do with being a veteran.
As promised, Staff Sergeant Stephen Otero is on our live online chat. You can connect with him by going to myfoxhoustonlive.com. This year, the Houston Police Department established a division dedicated to mental health emergencies. And now, when someone dials 911 concerned about an individual suffering from a mental illness, a specialized team will respond. The Crisis Intervention Response Team is staffed with a licensed counselor who has limited access to health records. Officers can then assess the risk of a situation before they get there. The division is taking it a step further and trying to create a unit that specifically responds to veterans in crisis.
Over the last 5 years, the numbers of contacts we've had with veterans have increased every year, and they're continuing to increase. And we're seeing more veterans, younger soldiers. If I confront an individual who has been through combat and has a lot of experience in the military, I myself may not be able to provide that one-on-one peer consultation.
All new police officers undergo 40 hours of training on crisis intervention and de-escalation, and then every year they go through an 8-hour refresher course. And the need is great for this specialized training this year among the greater population. The suicide rate is way up, particularly among middle-aged Americans. This is according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. There's also the same age group experiencing most of the veteran suicides. A local Vietnam veteran we spoke with thinks he knows why so many older veterans take their lives. Even today, you can find Vietnam veteran Tom Mitchell serving his country. He continues to take care of his comrades, those who found their way off the streets of Houston and into the hands of a growing nonprofit called U.S. Vets. Mitchell is Houston's executive program director.
People forget that it isn't just the combat zone that causes issues. It's things that happen in their life while they were in the combat zone are also a factor. You know, what happened with their relationships, what happened with their families, you know, were there medical issues, all kinds of things. Their life goes on even if you're away.
Chances are you've seen the fruits of his labor. This colorful multi-story housing and assistance program is Home Base, located near downtown next to the 59 and 288 interchange in the old Holiday Inn. Right now, 450 vets, mostly men, live here full-time. Plans for 150 new veteran housing units are in the works. Private donations, state and federal grants keep the program running. Your donations to the Houston Food Bank keep stomachs full. Veteran Milton Mays has stayed with U.S. vets for 4 years. He remembers why he served in World War II.
Helped to save a whole lot of people. A whole lot of people. See, I wasn't enlisted. I volunteered.
The program provides Mays a safe place to enjoy life. He says he spends his days watching television and reading his Bible.
I just thank the Lord that He blessed me every day. I couldn't have made these 90 years if it hadn't been for Him. Yeah.
Beyond the generosity, and there is so much, you can't help to feel as if the system has left these veterans behind. From Mitchell's experience, the statistics don't necessarily tell the whole story.
If you think about it, not a whole lot was provided for Vietnam vets, so they were just ignored, and if they committed suicide, it's because they committed suicide. It had nothing to do with being a veteran. There are ways to deal with it, bring it out in the open, deal with it in a logical manner, allow them to have the services that they need, but also allow them to move on with their lives, with jobs. I've heard people not want to hire veterans because they're afraid they have some sort of issues, and we don't want to go there. That'll make the problem worse.
If you know a veteran who could benefit from the housing, counseling, or employment assistance offered by U.S. vets, we've posted a link to their website on myfoxhouston.com under the Seen on TV page. The organization also hosts weekly meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, and Cocaine Anonymous, and you don't have to be a veteran to attend. And now we've got a question for you. Would you take a job in a war zone if it paid 6 figures? That's what some civilian contractors are being offered to fill vital jobs. The lure of that big paycheck almost cost one truck driver his life in Iraq. The dramatic video is next.
Hey, let's go. Guys, you got to go. We got to go. Okay? Come on now.
Truck 5 is down and cannot move. I am getting shot.
Yes, okay.
An American contractor captured a very rare moment on film. It was the moment doctors believe triggered his severe PTSD. Truck driver Preston Wheeler was working in Iraq for KBR, a subsidiary of Halliburton. His convoy came under fire, stalling his vehicle.
Sir, truck 5 is down. I am trapped in my truck. I need some help.
Truck 3 is down. You okay, Daggett? Okay, trucks are driving by. Is there any way I can jump in one? Okay. Keep your head on your shoulders, all right? Number 9, pull up there alongside 8. Contractor, truck 3 needs a ride.
Sir, I have no gun back here. In truck 5, I am by myself.
Somebody's gonna have to help me. We gotta get to him.
You out, I'm scared. I'm going home. Done. I'm out of here. They just killed him. Oh, Jesus. They just killed him. Oh, my God.
That video has been viewed over 39,000 times on YouTube. The outcome is tragic. Mr. Wheeler survived, but 6 of his KBR coworkers, all civilian contractors, were killed, as well as 2 soldiers. A 7th driver and another soldier went missing, and 11 drivers were injured. Dr. Seth Silverman, a Houston psychiatrist, recommends treatment for anyone who has suffered from traumatic events that result in PTSD. He says with regard to the military, the condition can be prevented by testing troops before they're in a situation they might find traumatic.
It shows that you can test for people, and you can actually look at people who are more likely to have a PTSD. You can give them more leave, more flexibility. You don't deploy them 4 times in a year and a half. There's clear data that shows If they have more time at home, they're going to be better off.
Silverman does not recommend treating PTSD with group therapy. When recommending treatment, he uses a four-pronged approach. First, he finds medications that will stabilize the patient along with short-term therapy. Then he makes sure their physical pain or injuries are addressed.
The third thing that you do, and I think this is absolutely critical, is you test and you retrain and you put people back to work. People think disability is a good thing. It's not. Very few people are satisfied being on disability. You need to make sure that they feel productive and constructive.
And finally, Silverman says follow-up counseling visits are critical because they allow patients to work through their trauma and equip them with techniques to reduce their stress. And the most powerful idea Dr. Silverman shared, and this is key for anyone who knows someone who is suicidal: don't delay treatment or settle on treatment that doesn't work. You don't just lose time and money, you lose hope. The Veterans Administration has taken a lot of heat for not doing more for our veterans seeking medical care. I visited Houston's Michael E. DeBakey VA Medical Center, and they tell me the message has been received loud and clear. Coming up, I'll highlight some of the changes taking place there.
What we know now about PTSD is that people can really recover from their PTSD if they have very specific treatments.
Recognizing the high rate of suicide among veterans, the federal government began putting more money and staff into suicide prevention in 2007. The new system puts veterans in crisis on a fast track for getting help, and it identifies those who are at a high risk of suicide.
Well, this is a big facility, so we're passing the post-deployment clinic, and this is the area that newly returning veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan can come as their first stop. They can get a mental health exam, they can get a physical exam, they can get social work assistance, they can do their enrollment right here in this one waiting room.
Inside Houston's Michael E. DeBakey VA Medical Center, this is where it all begins for our new veterans. The city is home to more returning veterans than any other area in the U.S. And then from here, then where would they go?
It depends on what they need. If they decide we want a specialty program for PTSD, if they need alcohol or substance abuse, if they need some TBI, a traumatic brain injury exam, all of those exams are scheduled out and consulted out from here.
Veterans have been critical of the way their health issues are handled by the Department of Veterans Affairs, some seeing the VA as a last resort for care. But a new presidential mandate is aimed at changing that. The Uniform Mental Health Services Act requires VA facilities across the country to provide an equal level of care. Dr. Karen Thompson is director of the DeBakey VA PTSD Clinic. For people who are critical of the way the VA has treated PTSD, what would you say to them?
The VA has been criticized about backlogs of claims, and that's something that's being addressed. But the clinical care that's being provided has been enhanced by these very high standards and by the addition of many, many mental health staff at every facility. So we have performance measures, there's oversight, patients have to be seen within 14 days and have to be able to get an appointment within 14 days. So I think the clinical care side of the VA in mental health is working better than it ever has.
You've worked with the VA for 23 years, since the late 80s, early 90s. So talk a little bit about the pathway for treatment for PTSD, how it's progressed over the years.
So the VA has really, over the last 6, 7, 8 years, really put forth a lot of effort to train mental health professionals across the country to provide the best treatments, the treatments that we know work based on the research and based on very strict criteria.
And Dr. Thompson says research shows psychotherapy or counseling with the veterans and their families is the best treatment for PTSD. She says 15 to 18% of returning veterans have a mental health condition. Dr. Laura March is executive director of mental health care at the DeBakey VA. The department has hired 200 additional employees in the past few years to combat suicide.
50% of the individuals who complete a suicide have never been seen in mental health settings. And I think the most important message is that treatment works, but you have to get it. And if you don't get it, it's not going to work. And if you don't engage in it, it's not going to work. And whether that's medication, education, learning skills, getting the support that you need, these are all things that are part of a comprehensive treatment package.
One of the most important additions is a toll-free hotline.
We've got the Veterans Crisis Line, and they even changed the name from Suicide Hotline to Veterans Crisis Line so that the call would be made earlier before a suicidal crisis is happening. If that's the original entry point, that is a national hotline. It's actually for anyone who's suicidal, but a veteran's instructed to press 1, and then they're speaking to a VA employee who happens to be in New York, but they know how to work with the VAs throughout the country.
The crisis hotline number is 1-800-273-8255, right there at the bottom of your screen. Veterans are urged to press 1, but that number is for everyone. And starting this month, the VA is expanding its hours. Now patients can make an appointment in the evening and on weekends. Psychiatric services will also be available on certain nights until 8:30 and on Sunday morning. And lawmakers realize suicide among veterans is a big problem which must be addressed. We spoke earlier with Texas Congressman John Culberson about what is being done to help our returning vets.
One of our top priorities has been to try to help find out why the suicide rate is so alarmingly high among veterans. So we've invested tremendous amounts of money in research to help figure out why this is happening and to help veterans recover once they return, to make sure we're identifying the injuries we couldn't see before, post-traumatic stress disorder, injuries to the soft tissues we were unaware of until recently, the damage that's done by the concussions of explosions to soft brain tissue. We think that a part of the suicide rate may frankly be related to it's of course related to stress, to the terrible circumstances that our veterans have to endure in defense of our country, but we think a part of it might also be due to the damage that's done to the soft tissues of the body by the concussion waves from explosions.
Culberson is putting taxpayer dollars behind the effort, saying Congress has authorized $188 million over the past 2 years in the VA budget for suicide prevention efforts. And there are a number of alternative programs to help our veterans decompress. They involve everything from yoga to music to fishing, and that is next.
A round landed 10 feet in front of me, blew me back. When I came to, I noticed half my foot hanging, and my left foot was the other way around. A buddy of mine told me about this program about fishing and kayaking. That first trip was really, really relaxing for me. It's better than, being in the barracks and being used to the hospital settings. Just gave me a break from everything. A reset button for me.
The Michael E. DeBakey VA Medical Center in Houston is using yoga and meditation in its treatment of veterans with PTSD and traumatic brain injury. The nonprofit providing the instruction at the hospital is called Expedition Balance. We spoke with the organization a year ago. To date, they have helped 160 local veterans through yoga, meditation, outdoor recreation, and nutritional counseling. And another alternative program involves veterans learning to play a musical instrument, write songs, and read music. The Houston nonprofit called Rock for Recovery was founded by disabled Army veteran Paul De La Cerda. He discovered he was able to escape his war wounds through music. His band, Warrior Spirit, is made up of all veterans. They travel the country performing for their comrades. For those here locally who want to experience the music firsthand, Rock for Recovery is based at the American Legion Post 416 near downtown Houston. And for those who find comfort on the water, there is another organization called Heroes on the Water. It allows the participants a chance to decompress from the stresses associated with combat and the rigors of rehabilitation.
Each time we go out, each soldier tends to open up just a little bit more. It's probably more therapeutic, both emotionally and physically for the soldiers, just to get out here and see that life hasn't ended, life goes on.
And we will have a link to all of the programs we've featured today on our website, myfoxhouston.com, under the Seen on TV tab. And of course, there are many more groups just like the 3 I mentioned. And in this age of social media, we can't forget the apps that you can download. We're going to have information on that for you next. A reminder, Staff Sergeant Stephen Otero is on our live online chat, and you can connect with him by going to myfoxhoustonlive.com. There are new smartphone apps and social media programs that are placing hope and support for veterans right in their pocket. And social media expert Ashley Small from Medley Incorporated joins me now with some new programs developed by the Department of Defense and some other organizations. And Ashley, you've got quite a few to go through here, I know, that are very helpful. So the first is a social media network. Talk about that one.
So veteranstogether.com is the first and only social media network designed by veterans for veterans. It's like combining Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and MySpace, believe it or not, all in one app to help family members and veterans connect, find job opportunities, and just stay in touch in their own space online.
And then there are 3 apps you're going to address as well. The first one deals with PTSD.
Yes, a PTSD coach is actually intended to help veterans find a platform to trigger responses and track their symptoms and kind of monitor their patterns as they work through PTSD. I love this app because it helps family and friends also know what symptoms to look for and kind of monitor the behavior of their loved ones.
Again, that's PTSD Coach, and this is a free app as well that's available on the App Store. Claims Coach app, what is that one?
So Claims Coach, you know, it can be a process to go get your veterans benefits. So this kind of walks you through the process of getting your veterans benefits. Everything from scheduling an appointment to finding a service officer nearby to also going through the process of organizing your documents. It has a claims organizer that you can actually organize your documents with. So it's kind of like a virtual assistant that'll help you claim your benefits.
And then the final one is a bit of a game for veterans, right?
Yes, certainly. So the Crypto Challenge app is more of a leisure app if you kind of just want to stimulate your mind. This is great for World War II veterans because it was actually used heavily during World War II, the idea of cryptographing. And essentially what this is in plain language is encoding and decoding information. You're up against the clock. So this is certainly more of a leisure if you just want to kind of reflect and take yourself back to some of those memories and have a little fun. That's a great app to kind of reminisce on some of those memories and challenge your brain.
All right, good information, very useful. Thanks, Ashley. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
We appreciate it, and we want to address the families as well. And through a documentary called Welcoming Your Soldier Home, we're going to do that. We're going to talk with the filmmaker about his journey of self-discovery and how he hopes it will help others.
So what I do now is I go around and I talk about my suicide and what it was like to in that moment and what I was thinking, and I speak to family members and I help them understand ways to better support their soldier. I help them get through certain situations, and my goal is to go and travel around the nation and speak to everybody and get my message out there that it's okay to feel the way that they feel and help them work through it along with their families, because their families are important. That is their support group. That is who we depend on as veterans.
The documentary called Welcoming Your Soldier Home follows veteran Andrew O'Brien as he travels around the country talking to other veterans and mental health experts about what got him through his darkest moments. Among other things, he asks the question, is PTSD curable? We spoke with him during a recent visit to Houston.
I finally just decided I was done, and I was tired of pushing it down, and I was tired of not being able to talk about it and open up about it and feeling ashamed for feeling the way I did. So I go into my kitchen and find 4 bottles of pills, chug them down, and then next thing I know, I wake up and I'm in the hospital the next morning. From the moment I woke up, my whole attitude just changed. You know, I was so happy that I wasn't successful at it, and I got really close to being successful at it. So what I do now is I go around and I talk about my suicide and what it was like to in that moment and what I was thinking, and I speak to family members and I help them understand ways to better support their soldier. I help them get through certain situations. We're going across the country and we're doing speeches everywhere, and through that process we're going to be making a documentary to kind of bridge that gap between the civilian mind and the veteran mind and let them see the inside of what we go through when coming back from war. I'm not embarrassed by it. You know, I go in front of big crowds of people and I tell them, look, I was affected by it. This is the decision I made, and this is why I'm doing what I'm doing now. And once they see that someone who went through all that and isn't embarrassed by it, they realize that it's not something to be embarrassed by. Well, with the documentary, it's just gonna help get that firsthand experience on camera. And I feel like once we capture that on camera, it's gonna help all these people start to see just what we go through. And we're gonna do screenings once it's completed across the country and show the documentary wherever they'll let us show it. We're all wired differently in the head. Everybody is all different. And just because you're affected by something and someone else isn't, that doesn't make you weak. The biggest thing is that you're not weak for getting help.
And we will post information about everything featured in today's program on our website, myfoxhouston.com. You'll find it under the Scene on TV page. And we'd like to thank all of our veterans and their families for their service and sacrifice.
This newscast brought to you by AutoNation. Go to myfoxhouston.com for more information.